Many of us have had periods in our lives when we struggled and have had to overcome obstacles thrown at us. These could have been obvious difficulties, like a job loss or a broken relationship that anyone could see and understand. There are also those hidden issues, like lack of self esteem or questions about identity and purpose that are deeply felt but are invisible to those around us. But what about those who've been dealt hardships at birth? How are they able to find purpose and passion in their lives? We're about to find out how one such person overcame her challenges and became an inspiration to many. Mandy B. Anderson was born with cystic fibrosis and has gone on to become a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and a leadership coach. She's also the co-founder of Rama Team, a women-owned business that offers life and leadership coaching for women. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm excited and honored to be here with you.
Well, I am so happy that you're joining us now. Mandy, I'll tell you, when we're kids, we all have dreams of what we want to do when we grow up.
Mhm.
But you have had a life-threatening disease from birth. When did you first become aware that you had cystic fibrosis, and how did that affect your childhood and any dreams you might have had?
Well, first of all, I love this question, and I don't get asked very often about the dreams I had when I was a kid. Well, I was born with cystic fibrosis, and my parents found out that I was diagnosed with it when I was 6 months old. So I don't really have a moment in time where I lived a life and didn't have the awareness of it. As a kid, I was always told by my parents that I could do and be anything that I wanted as long as I stayed responsible and took care of myself. And so from a very young age, they instilled in me the ability to put together my own treatments for breathing medication, to, figure out how to take my own enzymes, because that's part of cystic fibrosis as well. So I think being a kid, I was always aware of the fact that I had CF. I'm also a dreamer myself. As a kid, I wanted to be a singer. And I worked really hard at crafting that. And part of the miracle of my story is that I can sing, even though I have a life-threatening lung disease. And so I was always that kid who was going around pretending I was doing concerts, singing everywhere I went, telling people to call me, Maid Marian or something like that. I had a very vivid imagination as a kid. So that's really what it was like for me as a kid. I think the biggest thing, though, when I was in fourth grade, I had another classmate, come up to me one day and tell me that I was going to die before I was 30 because she read in an encyclopedia that people with cystic fibrosis didn't make it into their 30s or even their 20s. And so that was kind of the moment where I realized this disease is very serious. And I think that kind of just made me aware of the fact that I want to do everything I can as quickly as I can, just in case time ran out.
Hmm. So, did you ever have that feeling? Because, all kids, I think, naturally want to rebel. Did you ever have that feeling of, oh, I don't need this medicine, or I'm not going to do this, or I just want to be like everybody else and do everything that they're doing?
It's interesting because most kids with cystic fibrosis have that experience when they get to college. And that wasn't my experience. In fact, until my late 20s, I was the person that did everything by the book. I always did my medicine. My medical team would actually ask if I would be okay with other parents getting in touch with me because they wanted to see that it's possible to be healthy with this disease. And so I never went through that period at the same time as everybody else. What happened was in my late 20s, I started growing really weary of living with CF. And I also started growing really weary of being in other people's hopes and prayers, but my lung functions were going down instead of up. So my rebellion period happened when I was like 28. And I decided that I went to a prayer service. I was prayed for cystic fibrosis to be gone. And unlike any other prayer services, I decided this time I'm going to put my faith into action. And I flushed all my medication down the toilet. I do not recommend that, by the way, if you live with a life-threatening disease and you need the medication. But that put me into a 2-year experience of really figuring out what does it mean to be healthy with cystic fibrosis. And by the end of that, I ended up in the hospital and almost died. And so what I've learned is sometimes a healing or a supernatural type of dream of being healed of a disease comes through a miracle that you can't explain, but a lot of times it comes through medicine. And so I'm thankful that I was able to get back to my health. I didn't need a lung transplant, which was a miracle in itself. And now I'm really thankful for the medicine because I have since gone on to run a half marathon, and I've really regained the lung functions that I had before I flushed my medication down the toilet.
So how are you feeling right now?
Good, really great. I'm on a new medication that came out a couple of years ago called Trikafta, and it's as close to a cure as they've been able to get yet with CF. So it's pretty exciting to be living in a world where that is happening in the CF community. And so yes, I'm doing really well.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. You said that you were a dreamer when you were a child. Like you dreamed you
Mhm.
wanted to be a singer, but did you have nighttime dreams that you recall?
I do. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I am a very literal prophetic type of dreamer, where I have had dreams that will happen usually a couple months down the road, like 3 to 6 months. I have had a dream once where it happened literally the next day. So it's a weird thing. My best friend is the co-founder of my company, and we have conversations about dreams all the time.
Do you still remember your dreams now? So you talk about them with your friend all the
I
time?
do. I've gotten to the point where I think sometimes I wake up from a dream and I kind of know this is when I need to write down because something felt off. It felt like there was a message in the dream. And usually my dreams come in threes, where it's either three dreams with the same type of message or the same type of theme, or I go deeper and deeper into the same story 3 times. And then once the third time comes around and I kind of get to the end of it, it kind of wraps itself up. So interestingly enough, I had some very prophetic type dreams while I wasn't taking my medicine. And it really had to do with what I was speaking over my life and what I was going to believe as far as the life that I was going to live.
So did these dreams help you realize that you maybe should be going back on your medicine?
Not necessarily right away. I think there was an underlying theme of fear in them. But there was also a theme of making sure that I am speaking positively, but not necessarily for like positivity's sake, but just being very careful with my words and being very deliberate with the words that I was speaking over the situation. And, it's interesting because my doctors, not my doctors, one of my respiratory therapists has told me in the past that they have never seen somebody get that sick with cystic fibrosis and survive, especially without a lung transplant, and be able to get their life back. And so I really think that a lot of the internal self growth that I was doing and the diving into dream interpretations and really just digging deep, I really do think that was part of my process of making the decision that this wasn't where my story was going to end. Because I remember a day in the hospital where the first 4 days that I was in the hospital, and this was like a decade ago, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize my own face. I looked like death. My skin was gray. My cheeks were sunken in. There was no spark to my eyes. And I looked like the face of a lot of my friends who have passed away with cystic fibrosis. And in that moment, I made a choice and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, Mandy, this is not how your story ends. No matter what your new normal is, you're going to make this count. And so I think that decision probably did come from being deliberate with my words and from those themes that were in my dreams.
This sounds like this was your bottom,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people have to hit bottom before they get to, rise even higher than they were before.
Mhm.
Would you say that's what happened to you? And do you think that people have to reach bottom in order to succeed?
You know, I sometimes think that you do have to reach bottom. I think there are valuable lessons to learn at rock bottom that you cannot learn any other way. You can hear them, you can listen to other people who have hit rock bottom and learn lessons from them. But something happens when you experience it yourself. I think it produces in you a resilience to rise up and really go for it. I think it helps you get over your excuses as to why you haven't gone for something in the past. And so I really do think that you have to reach rock bottom. I know for me, health wise, that definitely was my rock bottom. I've also hit rock bottom financially. With my husband and I were 6 figures in debt around the same time. We had also lost our home to an apartment fire around this, like a year before I was so sick. And so all of that was just like the perfect rock bottom season that just came to a head when my health was going downhill.
Yeah, so it was just a series of events.
It really was.
Yeah. So a lot of times though, when people hit rock bottom, they stay there. So what was it in you that was able to get you to rise up and be who you are now?
Well, I think it was that because I'm a big dreamer and because those dreams hadn't happened yet. I remember about a few years before I was in the hospital fighting for my life, I remember laying on a massage table. And I consider myself a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I have these conversations that I like to say are with God. And I remember having a conversation where I really felt like God was asking me, are you okay if your dreams don't happen until you're 40? And I remember just kind of thinking to myself, well, I guess so, because it means I get to live till I'm 40. And so in that moment, I mean, when I was in the hospital fighting for my life, I was 30. And I held on to that. And I thought, well, none of that stuff has happened yet. Like I haven't done any of the things that I've been working on doing over the last 2-3 years. So I don't know that I'm going to look like a healthy person when I do them, or if I'm going to look like a sick person with cystic fibrosis, but I don't care what I look like. I'm going to make this count, even if that means I have to have oxygen and all the things that I feared. And I think that's really what kind of helped me step back up out of rock bottom. And thankfully, a few years prior to that, I had started my own journey of personal growth and working with different coaches and really digging deep to challenge my own paradigms and figure out what it is I needed to do to succeed in life and go after the dreams I had. And so I think all of that together is what kind of helped me make it matter.
How can people find out about you and your services?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me is at raymateam.com. That's RAYMATEAM.com. And from there, you'll be able to find our social media. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that is my favorite social media site. It is Ms. Mandy B. Anderson. That's MSMandyBAnderson.
We've been speaking with inspirational speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Mandy B. Anderson.